You know what would be more fun than real life marbles? Video game marbles. If only there was a game that could vanquish my hunger for pixely glass balls rolling around virtual obstacle courses. What in blazes? Huh. Marble madness. Looks like my prayers have been answered. Hello and welcome to Rob's Retro Reviews. When people think about Rare, they probably think about the N64 era, so games like Conker's Bad Fur Day, GoldenEye and Banjo-Kazooie were all developed by them. I'm here today though to take you further into the past than that, to a time when Rare was tasked with porting the arcade classic Marble Madness to the NES. The original arcade version was actually developed by Atari Games, so let's pop this in and take a look. Marble Madness is well, I guess it's an isometric puzzle platformer, or maybe it's some kind of racing game. I don't really know how you would go about categorising it, but either way, it's a game in which you play as a marble who needs to navigate its way to the end of various levels by simply rolling around. Okay, it doesn't make the greatest pitch for a video game, but stick with me, it might be good. Before we get too far into the game, let's dive into the story. I'm assuming that like in most NES games, you have to wait at the title sequence for some text or a basic cutscene to play. Huh, I guess there's no story here then. I suppose for a game like Marble Madness, all you need to know is that there's a marble, and there's going to be a degree of madness involved somehow. Unlike most NES games, Marble Madness attempts to give the illusion of 3D movement by using an isometric camera angle. This was probably quite cool at the time, but nowadays it dates the game quite substantially. Because this is a very early example of 3D gaming, it looks quite, well, to put it bluntly, it looks quite rubbish. Everything almost looks like a wireframe, and there's very little going on thematically besides different colours for every level. It would have been nice to have seen some different themed zones, like maybe snow, space or mountain levels, but I suppose that wasn't possible given the hardware limitations at the time. I have to admit, this game hasn't given us the best first impressions. There's no story, and it doesn't look very good either. But we all know that a video game is all about the gameplay. So, the objective in Marble Madness is to move a marble around a complex maze-like obstacle course and make it to the end goal. The faster you get to the goal, the more time will be added to your countdown timer, which is constantly ticking away as you complete the various levels. If you fall off the course or get killed by an enemy, you'll respawn after a death animation, but rather than taking lives from you, the only punishment is that you'll waste some of your precious time while the animation plays out. You can also be stunned by getting hit by certain obstacles or by falling short distances, whereas falling long distances will smash your marble and count as a death, which will reset you to where you fell from. The resets in Marble Madness are actually quite forgiving, and if you fall off the edge or die by other means, you'll never have to go back very far, which makes the game feel fair while still feel intense. For a game in which you play as a marble and there's absolutely no context given as to what anything is, the enemies are actually quite interesting. They have nothing to do with marbles, or the levels they exist in, but they're interesting nonetheless. There's these little green worms which will attempt to jump at you and eat your marble, which, by the way, you should never do at home. There's enemy marbles which will attempt to knock you off of the stage, there's green goo, or I guess it could be living acid, which dissolves you, and there's purple birds which break you with their beaks. Yeah, if you pay attention to what's going on in this game, it can get very, very surreal. And really, that's all there is to Marble Madness. It's a very simple game that's easy to pick up and play. It's not even essential that you use the A or B buttons, it's that simple, but that doesn't stop it from being difficult. The primary reason for the game's difficulty is the fact that you aren't given much time to finish the levels, and because you have to do them one by one, it's easy to mess up in a difficult section and it ruin your entire run, thus resulting in having to start the whole game all over again. Certain sections of the levels are very hard to manoeuvre around too, like this icy part in one of the earlier levels. I just sometimes can't get a feel for how movement works here, and yet other times I don't have a problem with making it over at all. Or this part where these metal poles are coming up from the ground and either stopping you dead in your tracks, making it impossible to jump over this gap, or pushing you into the air where you lose control of the marble. Although I actually learned later on that holding the A button down allows you to move faster, making it easier to jump over gaps and get around obstacles. There's also a ton of really thin ledges to get across, and this section in the last level with the disappearing platforms can be extremely challenging. There's all manner of different obstacles to get through. Long story short, this is a hard game. The difficulty isn't helped by the primitive graphics either. Sometimes the visuals will get in the way slightly by it not being obvious what the different types of terrain are. Sometimes it's not even all that obvious if the thing you're looking at is a wall or a pit, but after a while you do adjust to this. Marble? Madness. 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 Terrific case study on hard. 19-inch electro CRT marbles in your eyes. Marble Madness. Buy it today. Despite the game's difficulty, it's actually ridiculously short. Its length is made up through repeating levels in order to get used to them rather than it having a lot of levels to actually go through, and this means you can get through the whole game in around 5 minutes once you've mastered each stage. This might come across as a bit shocking, but there's actually a ton of NES games that are around this length too, and this is because quite a large portion of the NES library consists of arcade ports, and arcade games were short so that people could finish them and wouldn't hog the machines even if they mastered the games on offer. Looking back on it today though, this is insanely short, and with a lack of other modes to keep you coming back, the game ends up feeling quite shallow. Everything you know is wrong. Huh. I didn't expect Marble Madness to be so enlightening. One of Marble Madness's saving graces is that it offers a simultaneous 2-player mode where the objective is to race each other to the ends of the levels. You share the same screen, and if one player gets too far in front, the player who's lagging behind will suffer a time penalty and get teleported to the leading player's position, kind of in a similar way to the Micro Machines games. While this mode is great and offers some replay value, I wish that the developers would have given this mode a bit more substance. For example, they could have added multiplayer only levels rather than playing the single player ones, which you've already done a million times, and they could have added a co-op mode where both players had to reach the end together to progress. They could have implemented switches that open doors for the other player and all manner of different mechanics with co-op in mind. I'm sure I'm not the only one who likes to play the 2-player mode of Marble Madness as a team with a friend. Rather than rushing ahead, it can be fun to play the game cooperatively instead. The sound design is fairly good. Not the highest quality heard on the NES, but by no means the worst. It's quite middle ground stuff, really. One aspect of the game that does stand out though is the music, and I'm not sure it's for the right reasons. There's not really any cohesion between the game and the music, so because the sound designers were seemingly given free rein, I think they went a little bit crazy. Maybe they did this on purpose though. Maybe dying to this music over and over and over and over again was a part of the plan. Maybe it was a plan to make you lose your sense of consciousness and lose your sense of being, making you see things that you never thought possible. All the worldly things will appear in your mind, and you'll slowly go insane, making you lose your marbles! The D-pad isn't a great method of controlling a marble, as you'll only be able to move in 8 directions, and some corners require more precise controls than that. The original arcade version of the game used a trackball as the game's controller, which would have been way superior to the NES D-pad. Using the D-pad isn't too awful, but because you're sliding your thumb around so much, it can begin to get slightly uncomfortable. I suppose that's one reason that the game's short length is actually a good thing. This game really is a mixed bag of marbles, nuts. At its core, it's a good game, hence why it inspired other games such as Super Monkey Ball and Snake Rattle and Roll. The level designs are interesting, and the difficulty curve goes up just right, but it's when you look at the things around this basic core structure that things start to fall apart. There's only 6 levels, the multiplayer mode is lacking, there's no level theming, the music doesn't suit the game sometimes, there's no story whatsoever, the primitive 3D graphics are ugly and make it difficult to see what certain things are, and the controls are a little bit awkward because of the game being designed around the use of a trackball rather than a D-pad. Because of all these issues, I have to be honest with myself and give this game a 4 out of 10. I like Marble Madness, don't get me wrong, it's a great game at its core, it's fun and there's a good degree of challenge to be found, but it's dated quite badly and it's lacking various modes and features that other games coming out at the time had implemented, and this results in a game that feels empty. It's a shame that even to this day there's never been a sequel, because I'm sure if there would have been one, it would have fixed a ton of these issues and resulted in a classic NES title. As it stands though, we're left with a fun little game that leaves us with a feeling of being underwhelmed after finishing it. I would really only recommend this game if you found it for very cheap, or if you're an avid collector of NES games and you don't happen to have this one in your collection. For everyone else though, there's just not enough to it. Thanks for watching my review. As per usual, if you enjoyed it, give it a like and let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're feeling extra generous, then maybe even give it a cheeky share. Let me know in the comments if you've played Marble Madness and what you think to it too. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed giving this video a watch, and if you did, I'll see you in my next video. See ya!